you guys, it's me, Rachel, here with Senza Tempo Cane Corso. So people have wondered if Blondie was going to chew on her puppies, and yes she does. She plays with them. It's really cute. So I thought that I would get some video of that. I've got Nirvana here. She literally will not stop chewing on me. She's been following me around the yard, just chewing on me, chewing on me, chewing on me. And which has been, there we go, see? There we go. Good girl, Blondie. You get that puppy. You get that puppy. They're such great dogs, I'm not gonna lie. They're really great dogs. Just a wonderful little bunch of puppies, I'm not gonna lie. They have quite the personality. Achilles did a really good job on this litter. Blondie and Achilles did a great job on this litter. So, whoa. Blondie is such a hoot. Isn't she funny, you guys? Look at her crazy self. I don't see what, Preacher? Preacher, I don't see anything. Be quiet. You're just being an overprotective grandpa for no reason. There's nothing out there. Blondie, you crazy lady. Oh, be careful. Funny girl. She's such a hoot. Isn't she funny? Oh. Oh, I see. There's a bird over there. Oh, Preacher doesn't like the birds. It's not even in our airspace yet, Preacher. This is a vulture-free airspace brought to you by the one and only Preacher. You let him know. You want to see what he'll do? Watch this. Preacher. You better watch him. You never know. Look at him. He knows exactly where it went. Yeah. See it off in the distance? Probably not, but yeah, see it over that tree. That good dogs. Come here. Come on. Let's go. Back in here, Preacher. Good boy. Come on in. Come on, Blondie. Come on. Hurry. Come. Good girl. Anyway, thought that was funny. He literally will, when I mean he will chase them off the property, I mean literally he will chase them off the property. So anyway. Oh, look at Nirvana falling over the food dish. She's such a cutie. I'm so excited to be able to keep her and this other red female to see how they develop. There's no telling if they're both going to end up being keepers. As you guys know, there's never any guarantees. So keep in mind that every puppy that I keep is a prospect. You know, there's a lot that depends on whether or not that individual is actually going to make it into our program as a mainstay. But they are always given that opportunity. So I will say that they're going to grow differently. I've had some people that have been questioning Nirvana, her pasterns and whatnot. And the thing about it is she's a much larger puppy, much thicker, heavier puppy than the little red girl is. So she is going to develop differently because she has the more mass and she does have more angulation. And that does tend to look a little bit funkier whenever they're growing. In fact, if you've been on my channel a long time, and if you haven't, go and look at the videos whenever I very first got Batista. He was what we call down on his pasterns. And it's just a growing phase for a lot of dogs, especially the really large ones with a lot of bone. In fact, even Admiral went through that. And so it's just a growing phase that some of them go through. Some of them don't come out of it. Some of them do. But But anyway, but it's not something that I find troubling or that concerns me at all right now. It's just something that is a part of the process for these little dudes to go through. So it isn't concerning to me. And look at that structure. Good looking girl right there. So anyway, but yeah, I'm really overall very happy with the results of this litter. I did a little side-by-side of this female, actually. She's what we call the Blondie 2.0. And she actually looks just like Blondie did whenever Blondie was a puppy. Except for the fact that her head is a definite upgrade. And, well, actually, her whole body is. She definitely takes after her mother, more so than any of the other puppies. But, having said that, she is an upgrade for sure. Her angulation is better. Her top line is better. Her head is better. I actually, like I said, I did a little side-by-side of her and her mother at the same age. And you can really see how much the head has been improved based upon those pictures. And that's the point of breeding is, you want to basically be improving on what you got. And I've had some people question, like, after what happened yesterday, like, how does somebody get into breeding? How do you ever sell dogs with breeding rights, and what would it take, and things like that. And I want to clarify on that. Everyone has to start somewhere, right? You can't know everything that you need to know before you get into something. It's kind of like back when I was younger, and I would be looking for a job, right? And I would see all these positions, and they were like must-have experience, prior experience, blah, blah, blah. Especially for like secretarial stuff. And it was like, okay, but like, where do you get that experience? If every single job requires that you have that experience, then where do you ever get it to even, start in the first place? And I think that most of them, you would start as like an intern or something like that. But in breeding, I think that for me personally, what I want to see is a base knowledge, right? So I want to know that you have the skill necessary to be able to identify correct anatomy on an animal. There are obviously going to be learning curves, and there are differences for every breed. So for example, I started off with pit bulls. And so whenever I chose Preacher, I was choosing him based on my knowledge of what makes a good pit bull. And with the pit bulls, they have a slight roach to their top line, and they do have a more angled croup. And I didn't see a problem with Preacher whenever I first got him, because that's what I was used to looking at. And it took me really getting familiar with the standard to understand that he did have faults. Now, what I mean by a fault is not necessarily that there's something wrong with him that makes him unhealthy. That's not what that is. Because the reality is that different croups are called for in different breeds for different reasons. The type of croup that Preacher has is actually really great for animals that are built for speed. You will see that a lot in different breeds. You know what I mean? Even the roach to the croup is actually common in a lot of your sight hounds. And so just because a dog has a particular trait doesn't mean that it's an unhealthy trait. It may just be that it isn't correct for the breed. And so I wouldn't necessarily discount or disregard somebody because they maybe had the wrong idea about, say, something like a top line or a croup, so long as they did understand the difference between like a swayback dog, right? And say like the absolute, like angled top line of, say, the German Shepherd, or the show German Shepherd, I should say. So I think that what enabled me initially to have the skill to be able to identify this is actually my background in artwork. I've always loved animals. I've had books on dogs my entire life. I grew up with the Encyclopedia of Dogs. I was very familiar with different breeds, enjoyed reading that book and other reference books. And then, of course, drawing. And so when you draw, you become very acutely aware of the correct body proportions. And it is a nice little kind of background in being able to identify good structure, because you have to be able to identify what's wrong with a piece of artwork whenever you're doing it so that it is lifelike. And so what's funny to me is Reese, my best friend, who's also a breeder, she also has a history in art. And so I think that has lend itself to both of us in a very positive way. However, I wouldn't say that is all that it takes. I mean, you do have to do your background, your research, right? And so she grew up in a home where they were breeding huskies, and so she kind of had that idea, and they were already showing dogs, so she had a good idea of that. And I had just the art, and then of course all the research that I had done, and then I started off breeding pit bulls, and so I took that knowledge into breeding this breed. And like I said, there was a bit of a learning curve for me, simply because of the fact that I had started off with a different breed. And because I was not into the show community, I really didn't, other than really extreme cases like maybe greyhounds or whippets or things like that, I didn't really see a need for things to be different, right? Like, for example, the different croup on a Corso than there is on a different breed, or the shoulder lay, you know what I mean? Like, or the angle of the shoulder. Like, for example, with a lot of sighthounds, there's a very steep angulation to the shoulder that is incorrect for this breed. So I think that you need to at least have your basics down. It's like anything in life. It's like if you want to be a plumber, then you have to know the basics of plumbing. You don't have to know everything. Obviously, that there is a such thing as experience, right? And there's only so much you can ever learn from a book. But you do need to at least have your basics down. And with breeding, I think that it's the same way. And there's so many people that come to me with absolutely no knowledge at all, and they just want to breed dogs. They just come to me and they think that I can pick this amazing dog for them, or they think that they can go to a good breeder who has done that work and buy a dog from them. And you absolutely can do that. But where the problem comes up is then whenever you have your litter of puppies, you're going to have both good and bad puppies, and you're going to have to be able to decide which ones are the correct ones to breed and to maintain your program, and which ones are not. And if you don't have that skill, that knowledge, then you're not going to be able to maintain the quality that you may have started off with. So just buying good dogs isn't enough. You do need to have that knowledge. And you have to have an eye for it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just one of those things where just because you want to do something doesn't necessarily mean that you will be good at it. And that's just a harsh reality of everything in life. There are things that I would love to be able to do, but I would never be able to do them. For example, when I was younger, I wanted to be a marine biologist. And I had to face the hard reality that I wouldn't make a good marine biologist because I'm not good at math. And in order to be a marine biologist, you actually do need to be good at math. And it's just not something that I have the skill for. And so I just have to kind of sit back and be like, well, that's not my path in life. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that I'm a horrible person. It just means that that's not where I particularly was going to shine at. And so, as a breeder who is trying to promote responsible breeding, I have an obligation to kind of be critical of people and to look at them and say, okay, well, do you have the skill? Do you have what it takes? And maybe you may not have the skill yet, but do you at least have the initiative? And I can always tell those people because they've done their research. They don't come to me and ask me to tell them everything about the dogs and so that they can then choose the better dog. They will try to show their knowledge by saying, okay, well, this is what I see. What do you think? And that's what I do. Like, for example, I spoke with multiple other breeders about me picking between these puppies, and I sent them the pictures of the puppies. However, what I did not do is just be like, hey, what do you think? I said, this is what I see. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And that way they know that I'm not just being lazy. I'm not just trying to get them to do my job for me. I'm asking for their expert opinion as a person that is also in the same field of work as I am. And it really shows that I've done my work, I've done my part, but that I am looking for an outside opinion, which is honestly, very common, because when you are so close, when you bred a litter of puppies and you're looking at them, we call it kennel blindness. It can be very easy to get way too attached to your own dogs, and you start to lose the ability to really look at your own lines from a critical perspective, because you're just too close. And so I find that it is a good practice to definitely kind of bounce ideas off of people and ask for their opinion. But you at least need to have done your basics, and you need to have an idea of what you're doing. You can't just keep, relying on other people to give you your answers for you. And so, it's not that I would never sell a dog to a breeder or even somebody that's never bred before. I think that if I saw a person that had the raw skill necessary, I would absolutely encourage them to get into it, because the reality is there's a lot of people breeding that don't have the skill at all. And if we're going to have a healthy breed, then we need more people that know what they're doing and less people that don't know what they're doing. So while I am not a genius in this, I'm not a perfect person. I'm not a mind reader. I'm not a psychic. It's not that I'm never going to make a mistake in choosing or not choosing somebody, but I do have to at least try my best. And that's what I do. I try my best to determine whether or not I think that a person has the ability to add to the community or not add to the community. And so, and that's what I do. So, to answer that question as the longest way possible, as usual, that's kind of how I go. That is the way that I go about it. Somebody had asked me, they were like, well, I show my dogs already. Would you, what would it take for me to be able to show one of your dogs? And the thing is I don't have a problem with somebody just showing one of my dogs, even if they don't want to be a breeder, so long as they already have some experience in that area. One of the biggest things I have found is I've sold a couple puppies as possible show prospects. And what I have found is that the people, they usually, they like the idea of doing it, but when it comes to actually doing it, they don't. And I get that. I mean, it's not uncommon to think that you want to do something, and then maybe you get a little taste of it and you're like, no, I don't really want to do that. And so I would be more inclined to place a show puppy in a home with somebody that's already done it, because at least I know that puppy has the potential to actually fulfill that. Because for every puppy that I sell to a show home that ends up not showing the dog, that's a waste for the breed and for me, because obviously I want for my puppies to be shown. I want them to be out there if in fact they are high enough quality to do so. And so anyway, so that's why it's important that I am very critical of who gets those puppies, because there are very limited puppies in any litter that are going to be really high quality show dogs. There's plenty of people that show puppies out of their, I mean, you can honestly, if you look at all the puppies that have ever placed at a show, plenty of them have been titled as champions, even grand champions that really have no business being a champion. They have some pretty severe faults. And the reality is that if you continue to go to enough shows, you basically can title a dog, because if enough bad dogs or poorly structured dogs are at a show, if your dog just happens to be the best of the bad that day, then you will get you know, points on that. And so you can title dogs that really have no business being titled. You're not going to title them at a big show where there's actual real competition. But just because a dog is a champion or even a grand champion doesn't make it a great dog. And that's why you won't see me out there titling every single dog that I have. I've seen dogs with championship titles, a champion dog that looks just like Blondie and didn't even have a mask. Literally as bad of a head as her. And it was a champion, AKC champion. And I have screenshots of the dog. I thought it was hysterical because I get so much criticism for breeding Blondie. And it's like, okay, but that dog was bred too, and it's a champion. But nobody ever criticizes that individual. You know what I mean? And there's just so much hypocrisy in the breeding community. But overall, I don't, you know, when I bring one of my dogs out, I really want them to be a very nice specimen. I want them to beat the competition easily. Like, for example, Preacher. Preacher was able to champion very quickly in as little as, I want to say, he titled in less than 2 months. I don't remember how many shows, but I want to say maybe 6 shows he was a champion. And he could have grand championed. He has points towards his grand championship. You know, and could I title other dogs I have? Absolutely. Yeah, sure I could. But I don't want to title a dog that isn't a really fantastic dog. You know what I'm saying? I just don't. And none of my other dogs right now are what I would consider to be fantastic dogs. Doesn't mean that they're not breed quality. It doesn't mean that that when I put them in the right combinations that they won't produce beautiful dogs. But I just haven't produced, you know, like what I consider to be like a showstopper yet. I just, you know, in this litter, I do believe I have. I think this red female is really nice. We'll see how she develops. This light fawn, light mask female, if she ends up being as nice as I think she's going to be, I think that she would definitely meet that criteria. And so, you know, I think that I have produced dogs out of this litter, but it's just, you know, going forward, I think that I'm going to produce dogs like that. But, you know, I don't want to just title something just because I can. You know what I mean? There's so many breeders out there that just title everything just because they can. Because they have the time, they have the money, and they feel that it's necessary. They don't want to deal with the criticism of the other breeders. Like, oh, does that dog have a title? Does it blah, blah, blah? You know, like completely ignoring the fact that if we only ever bred dogs that had a championship title, you would lose a breed because there wouldn't be enough genetic diversity, because there's not enough champion dogs to maintain genetic diversity in the breed. So it's a ridiculous statement to make that only dogs that are titled should be bred. It's only valid to people that honestly aren't intelligent enough about breeding to recognize that it's not possible, nor would you ever want to do that, because it would ruin the breed. So anyway, I hope that kind of, there's another bird. I hope that covers the topic for people so that they can kind of understand why I feel the way that I do. No, it's right there.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the tree.
Yep, it's right there. Overhead. Preacher's not having it.
Let him know, Preacher.
He doesn't like it.
You let him all know.
He let it know. He's like, you better get away from here. You better get away from here.
You got a puppy chewing on you.
Yep, I know. That's part of the life. You got to be okay with that. So anyway, it's a long video, but as you guys know, I don't like to skim over topics. I do like to be as informative as possible. So that's my thinking on it. If you stayed till the end, then leave the comment Nirvana, and then I'll know that you're a true fan. Okay, y'all have a good day. Bye.